Hello and welcome to Fine is a Four-Letter Word. My guest today is Lilah Jones. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you. It's great to be here.
We were just talking before I hit record about what we had in our mugs of beverage. And you've got, what does your mug say?
You're doing great, sweetie.
Oh, love it. Very inspirational. Great way to wake up. So yes, Lilah was saying she has coffee in her mug, but tea is the afternoon beverage.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we go unleaded in the afternoon.
Yes. I found that if after 2:00, I cannot do caffeine. Otherwise, I'm still awake even at like midnight.
+1.
Yeah.
+1. Same with me.
I never used to be like that. I used to be able to drink caffeinated drinks like right up until I would go to bed, and it didn't affect me at all.
And now that's
no
not
longer
the case.
No, right. That is no longer the case. Yes. And I also mentioned that before I said, I'll mention this after I hit record of what I am wearing. So I don't often have on the Fine is a Four-Letter Word, a swag, but today I am wearing the long sleeve t-shirt because it's starting to get cooler where I am anyway in Northern Virginia at the moment. And I just thought it would be fun.
Love it. Love it. Swag is good.
Yes. Yes. I know people who have been listening to the show have been waiting forever. Like, when is it going to be available for me to buy? And I just really haven't gotten around to doing that yet. But maybe, you know what? That might be a good thing for holiday seasons coming up.
Boom. Got the Christmas gifts.
Move that up. All right, Lilah, this show is about you today. So let's get in. Enough about swag and tea. I want to hear your story. Tell me what values and beliefs were instilled in you as you were growing up that contributed to you becoming who you are. I know on your website, you have under the About section, you have some of your values listed there. So talk to me about, were those values of authenticity and heart-centered hustle and bold action, were those instilled in you as you were growing up, or did you develop more into those?
Oh, I definitely developed into it. I don't think, I always say I'm the last of 11 children. And when you have a last 11 children, it's just kind of a scarcity all the time and your survival of the fittest, right? And so I think when I was growing up, it was more of the typical Midwest values, right? Work really, really hard, keep your head down, keep your name out of the newspaper, get married, have some kids, and I don't know, work in your yard. And there's nothing wrong with that. However, I will say that as I've, certainly had more experiences and traveled and worked in interesting organizations and done interesting projects, I certainly have come to realize that where my unique differentiators are definitely in authenticity, having hustle, but a heart-centered hustle, and really making the interactions with people the most important part of my values versus the outcome. I was just talking to a colleague this morning, and we were talking about how no matter what you're doing, there's more than enough for everybody. There's no scarcity. There's abundance for everybody, but not everybody has that mindset. And so certainly being able to have, like I said, lots of different inputs that have helped me to appreciate and come to the values that I have today.
How would you define heart-centered hustle? Because hustle in my book and many people's has gotten like, people don't want to hear about it anymore. Like, oh, hustle is just leads to burnout.
Yeah. So I love that you asked that, because as someone who's been in sales for 20 plus years, right? Hustle is something that is a badge of honor.
Mm-hmm.
So if you ask people who are in a sales profession, oftentimes they'll say, I know how to hustle, or I work harder than anybody else, or they give you some type of a response that seems super one-sided, but it's so prevalent in the culture that it's just accepted.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And I love to say that I love to hustle, but it's heart-centered. So in other words, can you imagine if we were all hustling for more compassion, hustling for better relationships, hustling for more free time, hustling for amazing vacations and being able to make that true for us and everybody that we know, hustling to spend more time outdoors being healed by nature, hustling to just feel joy all the time and to spread it to everyone that you engage with. That's heart-centered hustle because it's coming from here and it's not based on anyone else's acknowledgement. It's not based on the credibility of a title or the credibility of something that's outside of us. It's not based on an outcome. It's based on how you feel in your heart and sharing that broadly. And I can hustle for that, sister, all day long.
I am in for that. I love that definition. And I love that you shared that because that just changes my whole paradigm around the word hustle. So much nicer. And yeah, I mean, I just feel that energy as you're talking about it. Oh, so good.
Nice.
Yeah. So as you, how did you choose? So you talked about the values that were instilled in you as you were growing up and now the values that you have on your website and a little bit about how you evolved into them. But tell me a little bit more about that evolution process. Like when you started out, you were in sales. How did you come from the hard work is what's going to get you success mentality to heart-centered hustle?
Sure. Very good question. So in thinking about the work that I want to do in the world and the work that I am doing in the world and what differentiates me from everyone else who is talking about their areas of passion and what they want to accomplish, I had to think about what's really important to me and how I see the world. And as I think about what was sold to me and all of us, which is our society and our culture is all about, right? You go to school, you get the good grades, you can finish that sentence. You go to college, You work for the company, multiple companies, get older, and then you do whatever you do. And that's all fine. But it's a very linear and a very simple and a very predictable way to look at life. The second you have any variable come in there that disrupts that vision, it's very hard to be able to land on your feet to say, okay, I know that this is what I'm supposed to be doing, but my heart is really someplace else. And you feel this constant disconnection from what you're doing. I don't know if you've ever experienced that where you're like, I'm going through the motions. I'm kind of on autopilot. My head and my heart is someplace else. And we learn to not listen to our head and our heart because what's been sold to us, the vision, the movie is hustle, work hard, try to be the woman who has it all, the husband, the kids, the house.
Right. And be logical. And right.
So yeah, when you're trying to do all those things, at some point you come to the fact that, okay, wait a minute. What I'm basing all my hustle and hard effort on is a movie that I saw or somebody told me about. And that was just one storyline. There's many storylines. So if I had to land the plane on this and talk about the evolution was really about being honest with myself, getting quiet enough to allow what's inside of me to dictate my actions versus just reacting to what was coming at me. And then being able to have the courage to act on it. Yes. A lot of times we may have some of those things, but we don't have the courage to act on it and then put it on blast. Putting it on blast, saying, hey, this is what I stand for in the world for all to see. And so, it has been a journey. And what I like to say is because I've been through that journey with adversity and challenges, it's what makes me a better coach, makes me a better leader. It makes me a better just colleague and friend to all those that I serve.
Yeah, that courage piece is so important. I have a program called Fuck Being Fine, and the 3 pieces, the third pillar of that program is courage for exactly the reason that you mentioned, because you can get in touch with your inner voice. You can, be grateful, get in touch with your inner voice, hear what your heart is telling you, and then you need the courage to implement.
That's sometimes the hardest part. Yeah. And it's the hardest part because we don't necessarily have a movie to follow. Right. We have a million movies to follow on the typical path to, what we call satisfaction and happiness. We have a million movies and people who can say, oh yeah, this is what you should do to kind of continue to water those seeds of hustle. And you have to do this and you got to work hard and that it's got to be a grind and that there has to be suffering attached to accomplishment, which that's not true.
Right.
You don't have to have suffering attached to accomplishment. You can accomplish and have a wonderful, amazing time and be in the energy of attraction all the time.
Key takeaway right there.
Say what?
Key takeaway right there.
Key takeaway. Key takeaway. Absolutely. However, again, what is promoted is the opposite of that. And so when I think about being able to show up with courage and say, here's who I am, this is what I stand for, now I'm going to act on that, and I'm going to be unapologetic about that act. I am going to invest as much time, money, and energy that I need to in order to help my vision and my ideas for the world take flight. That's not popular. We'll invest time, energy, and effort to send our kids to college. We'll invest time, energy, and effort to get the latest car. We'll invest time, energy, and effort to look cool and to look the part and to get the titles, but we won't invest time, energy, and effort to have our ideas and our own authentic identity take flight. And so I push people and I encourage them to check themselves on that mindset and to consider how life could be if they had the courage to get their ideas in 3D and 4K.
Oh, I like 3D and 4K. Nice. How do you work with people, or what would you say to people who are like, yeah, but what if people around me don't accept me for this? Like, what if I am rejected? I think that's a lot of the reason why people don't find the courage to move forward, is because they're afraid of what the people around them are going to say. And since evolutionarily, we wanted to stay part of the tribe, otherwise we might die if we were, exiled into the wilderness. What do you say to people who have that fear of being rejected by the people around them?
So when I'm working with my clients, the first thing I encourage them to do, once they get clear on what they want to do and who they want to be, that's often more difficult than actually implementing something, especially when you've had the same programming for a long time. The first thing I always encourage them to do is to stop saying but and replace it with and. So I would say, instead of but, let's say and. And I would encourage them to then finish that sentence. Let's play that out. So you're standing in your own authentic power. You're saying, this is my identity. This is who I am in the world. And you're not accepted. People are rejecting you for it. What then? And I ask them to stand in that emotion, even if it means changing where they are in the room or moving in any way so that they can actually start to feel the emotions of rejection, and try that on. And then I ask them, and how does that feel? And we go through that a couple of times with whatever it is that they're feeling like will be this thing that's going to keep them from moving. And as we go through that, we typically get to a point where they say, oh, actually, as I think about all the what if scenarios and the worst case scenario that could happen, that's actually not that bad. Not only is it not that bad, it's not even something that's real. The chances of that actually happening
that's right.
are pretty slim. And so then I go back to this. So then what then is holding you back? And it's just subconscious programming in their mind that is not real. But no matter how much productivity hacks and how early you get up and how many to-do lists you get, your ideas don't get off the paper because you've got a block subconsciously. And so then we work to try to move that out. So that's how I would encourage them to move past that.
Yeah. Fantastic advice. And now I'm going to turn the tables and ask you how you used that similar advice to move yourself forward first tell my audience the story of the time when you said everything was fine and it was not fine. And then maybe how you used that advice to help move yourself forward in your story, because you were afraid to share it, because you were afraid of what people were going to say.
Exactly. So bringing everybody up to speed, I had an opportunity to experience being scammed out of quite a bit of money. And it happened through a real estate transaction. So I was going back and forth with my real estate agent and the lawyer and the closing company and the mortgage company. So you're doing all of these communications via what? Email. Well, right. The closing company that was sending me the instructions for wiring got hacked. And so instead of getting an email from them, I actually got a spoofed email that came nested in a longer communication. So I didn't realize it was spoofed. It told me to wire the money to a fraudulent account. And guess what? I ended up wiring the money to the fraudulent account because I didn't catch it. Bank agent didn't catch it. Nobody caught it. We didn't catch it until we got to the closing and the money wasn't there, which is not a great thing to experience.
No.
Not only did I have this experience, but it was on blast. Like everybody was there and they were watching me and they were giving me all of their opinions of fear and doubt and saying, how could you do that? And why didn't you call? And blah, 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 all stuff that's not helpful in the moment. And so I found myself feeling like, all right, now I've lost this money. I've now got to figure out how to get it back. I also still need to close on this transaction. Interest rates are about to go, at the time we were doing this, they were still at 3%. So you can all respect that. And I was really in a tight spot. And so one of the things that I did was first to prioritize what's the most important. The most important at that time was saving the house. Why? Because I had my mom who was older, who needed to come move in with us. I had the kids who needed to enroll in the school. I had all of these things that were happening. It was going to have a huge impact on their lives if we did not make that move. Would we be okay? Maybe, but it would be disruptive. And so I prioritized.
Yeah.
First thing was, were you going to say something?
No, I was going to say just to put things into perspective, like when you found out that you had wired the money to the wrong place, you were sitting at the closing table.
Yes.
Like there was no, well, wait, I have a couple of days to figure this out. Like you're already sitting there. I just want to point out that part.
In the hot seat. And everybody looking at you like.
Yeah. What do you mean you wired it to the wrong place?
And giving me the number like, okay, call the FBI and figure it out. And you're like, I've never played out a scenario in my mind where I need to call the FBI.
Right.
Just even hearing those words makes you panic.
Yeah.
That being said, the first thing was prioritize. So prioritize, save the house, find another set of money so we can do the down payment. Figured that out. Not easy, but figured it out. And delayed the closing so that I could still get to the relatively same interest rate, a couple extra points, but the house was saved. Then the next thing was, how do I get this money back? Never mind what everybody said. Oh, you're never going to get it back. But that's not helpful. It's not helpful. I was like, let me put on my accountability hat. Let me not worry about how uneasy I feel about this. Let me not worry about the worst case scenario of everyone finding out and me feeling even smaller. And let me move forward. And that's what I did. And I found people who could help me. And I got them the next day by like 12 o'clock. I found someone who could help me figure out what to do and who could be a partner with me and who could ease some of my fears around getting the money back. I found out within 24 hours, the money was still there and the bank account was frozen and that it was going to take me 4 or 5 months to get the money back, but I was in fact going to get it back. That was a huge shift. But that whole idea of being afraid, and then when I was looking for people to help me that next day, I felt like I was going to get scammed again. Like you ever been in a car accident and then you automatically feel like you can get another car accident because that's the energy you have. And so it was very, very scary. And it was very, very, a very vulnerable moment. Absolutely. A very vulnerable moment. And so I had to consciously put all of that on the side because it was getting in the way of me being effective and finding a way out of it. So I said, you know what, just for the next couple hours, I'm going to put everything I feel on the side and I'm just going to execute to try to, find out who can help me. And that worked out for me. I was able to get through that situation. We managed through it and I got just about all of it back in June. So we closed in March, or that happened. It started in March. And by June, I had it all back, just about.
That's so incredible that you were able to get the money back. Like that just is not a common ending to that kind of story. And I'm sure you are so grateful. I'm like gratified to hear that that's how it ended for you. And I have to believe that part of the reason for that ending is because you were able to focus on what now, like acceptance to a degree, right? Like, I can't believe this happened to me. And the acceptance of, okay, it did happen. Now what? Now what are the next steps? And just like you said, putting aside the fears and everybody else's doubts so that you could focus. And here's exactly where some hustle helped.
You think? Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Again, that's another, there's so many cool and awesome key takeaways in our conversation to this point, even about being able to put put those thoughts aside so that you can do what you have to do in this moment.
Exactly. Because it's so much more difficult when you are having to manage through all of those things before you can act. And what happens often is you are seized with fear. Have you ever had that where you are just seized with fear? Maybe you don't call it fear, but you're seized with chaos in your mind and not knowing what to do next. And so you do nothing.
Right.
Same
Which
thing.
is also a choice. You know, I always come back to, there was a Rush song that if you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice. It's that same thing. Like when you're gripped with fear and you don't do anything, that is just as much a choice as choosing to do something.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, of course, you had mentioned that, you know, this is embarrassing. Feels shameful. Like, how did I get caught in this? And you didn't talk about it for a long time, or for a while.
So it's funny. I remember saying to my husband when we left the original closing, I said, hey, listen, here's the talk track. Like, I needed to manage the talk track. I was like, when people ask, did we close? Because everybody's at home like, okay, we're ready with the champagne. I want us to say we hit a snag and the closing is delayed, even though I didn't know that that was going to be true.
Yeah.
I just said we hit a snag and the closing is going to be delayed. That's it. Nothing else. Because what I didn't need is family calling me saying, I can't believe you did.
Right.
Like, I didn't need
that
people's advice.
Yeah.
I didn't need other people's issue. I didn't need that. I was like, so I want you to bring it in. We don't talk about it just for a little bit until we can figure out what we can do next. So that was super, super helpful. Yeah. And what's funny is he went to work that day and he was like, oh my gosh, he's like, I can't believe this. I was like, I know, just go to work and we'll talk about when you get home. By the time he got home, I already had a solution. Like, I was like, money's there. It's going to take a little bit. We're going to get it back. And he was like, dude, what'd you do today? Like, I went to work. You like, what'd you do? Right. And so it was funny. But yeah, just that idea of being able to say, hey, I'm going to move through this. It is very difficult. I'm not doing fine. Like, I am falling apart. But at that particular moment, other people's opinions and thoughts or sympathy, whatever, wasn't helpful. I needed to take action to get my money back.
Yeah.
And so I was laser focused on doing that.
Yeah. And then after you did that, and how many days was it until you actually went to closing then? I mean, I know you didn't get the money back for a couple months, but.
So we closed on that. So it was supposed to be a Thursday. So I found on a Thursday we got scammed. Found out on Friday the money was still there. Yay. Frozen, but still there. And then like all these steps I had to take in order to get it back. And then we were able to close on Tuesday.
Okay.
So it ended up being exactly what I said. We hit a snag and the closing will be delayed.
Isn't it amazing that when you put an intention out into the universe, how it can play out that way? Exactly. Absolutely. As you envisioned, as you spoke it. And that's what happened.
Well, my subconscious mind immediately began to look for information to make that true.
Right. Which is what happens, which is what our subconscious mind does in every case, whether you're looking for ways to make something positive true, like you did, or something negative true, which most people would call worrying.
Or even if you're just programming your subconscious mind and you're not aware of it. So in other words, if your subconscious mind works on, those types of emotion-filled words, those type of emotion-filled thoughts, then when you're not aware of what's going on to your subconscious mind, maybe when the television's on or the news is on, or you've got some crazy song on the radio that's all got a super lower level frequency, lower level energy, and just is not necessarily where you feel like, you're at your highest self, you're also programming your subconscious mind then as well. And you're not even aware, which is scary. You're not even aware of it. And you're wondering, why have I felt like in a funk for like just the last 6 months? And I always encourage people I work with, take a look around you and see what is influencing your subconscious mind.
Yes.
See what's coming in that you're not aware of. Who are you around? What are you listening to? What are you putting in your mouth? What are you putting in your ears? What are you putting in your mind? How are you working out your body? And if you look at those things and you take an inventory, you'll probably find a place where you've got a serious energy leak that needs to be filled.
Yes. Yes. Most people are so unaware of what, a lot of people it's easier to be aware of what you're putting in your mouth. It's easier because you can see it if you're, want to pay attention to what you're eating. And it's a little more challenging to think that equally, if not more important, is what you're putting into your mind. And
Absolutely.
what is that, what is going on in that world?
Absolutely. I think that it's interesting too, because advertisers know this.
Mm-hmm.
There's people who make a lot of money and who've made a lot of money for a long time on conditioning the masses.
Yeah.
Conditioning the masses. And it's awful hard to revolt or go against the grain when you are over medicated.
That's right.
Underserved, in your body, confused and have chaos and fear in your brain.
Yeah.
It's very, very difficult to say, you know what? I'm going to take a step back and figure out how can we solve for healing Mother Earth. I'm going to take a step back and devote my life to solving for hunger. I'm going to take a step back and I don't care about the money or the discomfort that people say that you'll have. And I'm going to just focus on the impact that I want to have on the world instead of being so worried and so tied to kind of this hamster wheel that everybody says is what needs to happen, but is also just an illusion.
Right. Right. Yeah. I need this job. I need to do this thing, whatever this thing is, because how else am I going to make money? Yeah.
Exactly.
At what point did you feel comfortable enough to start telling your story?
Oh, dear. That's been a journey. I actually didn't want to tell it at all. Nobody wants to put that story of vulnerability on blast for everybody to hear. But the gentleman who helped me had a software company that was all about like, don't do wires for banks, like do it through our software. And he helped me. So I felt indebted to him and he asked for my story. And I was like, sure, I'll tell the story. And I thought I was telling it just like to his internal employees, right? Like, here's why what you do matters, right?
Right.
Oh my God. And it went on blast. And all of a sudden it was like on the news and this and that. And all of a sudden it was a thing. And I was like, this is not what I necessarily want. But there's no such thing as a coincidence. Everything happens for a reason. And now I've gone on to tell that story to lots of audiences. And I've gotten through that area of vulnerability. And I've realized that it's okay. It's okay to be vulnerable and to share it. And guess what? Everything worked out just fine. And if I can help one person take just a moment and pause before they wire money, or they can tell their friend this story and their friend ends up not having to go through this, then it's worth it. And it's my duty to share it.
Yeah. I saw recently there was, I don't know if it was a study or a story or some kind of research around vulnerability and how much people respected people who were vulnerable, that people who were vulnerable were looked at as more trustworthy, more respected, more, people just put more faith into them. And at the same time, those same people were reluctant to be vulnerable themselves because that would be seen as weakness.
Yes. I recall someone telling me, Lilah, your power is in your vulnerability many years ago. And I was just like, that can't be. My power's in my hustle. My hustle is what's gotten me where I am. And they're like, nope, your power's in your vulnerability. And the second that you embrace that and you let that be true, then you'll find that out. And that's been absolutely true.
Was that just hard to make that after the story?
Huh?
Was that said to you before or after this happened?
After.
Okay. I was just curious if somebody said it to you before and then this story made that.
It was after, but it was before the story was well known.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, they said that's where your power is. That's where you're different. That's where your hustle and all those things that are kind of what makes Lilah unique have gotten you to where you are. What's going to take you to the next level is your ability to connect with people, share your vulnerability, and help others do the same. Yeah. And I was like, no, I'm more comfortable with like the hustle coming from,
right,
the other way. And so that was also a little bit of a journey because it takes time to unwind a lifetime of programming.
Right. Yes. And that is, again, another key takeaway. I'm just going to keep pointing them out here because that everyone's true power comes from their vulnerability.
Yeah.
Because that's what makes us human and helps others connect with us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Man, so good. Thank you so much for sharing this whole everything, all these key takeaways, your story, all the work you do with clients and in the world. Before we go, I have to ask, as I ask all my guests, what is the song you listen to when you need an extra boost of energy? And go ahead and answer the question. Then I have a second follow-up question.
All right. So my go-to song is called Fantasy by Earth, Wind and Fire. I think it was from like 1976 or 78, something like that. But that is my go-to song.
Is there a story, a story behind why?
Yes, because I was out running one day and I had like Spotify on shuffle, and I was envisioning my life beyond corporate America. And I was thinking about, what could be and what might be true. And I was having all of these kind of limiting thoughts and limiting beliefs. And it was almost like my subconscious and my conscious were arguing with each other, like actively while I'm running. And all of a sudden that song came on, and the lyrics to the song really spoke to me. You can go and look them up on your own, but it has to do with this fantasy. Like you're living in this fantasy and you believe that it's true, but it's not. And your star is rising so that other people can find you. People have been looking for you. And just know that you're in a fantasy right now and that you're evolving to a whole new level. And for whatever reason, even though I've heard that song a million times, that particular time, it was almost like transforming. And it is now my go-to song.
You were ready for that message. Mm-hmm. Was that is that the song you put on when you needed to get into action after this whole, the discovery of the mishap of wiring?
It wasn't the song then. It's the song now. Okay. Back when this all happened, I didn't have a song because I wasn't prepared for it. Mm-hmm. I just got up and was like, it's go time. I didn't need a song. Okay. I had a bunch of money on the line. Yeah. I don't need a song. Like I just needed to, like I had more than enough energy to just move through that situationally.
Yeah. I love it. That's it. Like I said, this conversation, I'm so grateful for you coming on the show and sharing your wisdom. If people want to continue a conversation with you, where's the best place for them to find you?
Absolutely. So my website, LilahJones.com. And on there, you will find ways to interact with me, either through having me come in and run a workshop for your organization, bringing me in for a keynote. If you're somebody who's an ambitious professional and you're ready to kind of go from point A to point B and not take a whole bunch of circles and pit stops, I've got a place where you can sign up for one-on-one coaching. And then finally, if you're like, you know what, I learn more from like digital content for the ambitious women out there, I've got a digital women in leadership course, which I've taught to over 1,500 women and has had absolutely phenomenal results for them and what they've been able to accomplish from knowing that. So that's also available.
Awesome. I will put a link to your website and to your fantasy hype song.
I like it.
In the show notes. Lilah, thank you so much for joining me today on Fine is a 4-letter word.
Thank you for having me. It's been fun.